Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Everyday Healthy Human podcast. My name is Jen Rulon, and you may know me as Coach Jen on the gram. Well, today I have a very special friend, mentor, amazing human being named Dai Manuel. Dai and I met on Twitter or X, but it was Twitter back then. And it was about a product he promoted. And I reached out to him and started talking to him about it. And then we just started following back and forth. And then, I don't know, Dai, then you became my business coach. And then my business coach to a friend. And oh my God, like, where do we even begin? So, welcome to the Everyday Healthy Human podcast, Di.
Jen, you know what? I've been looking forward to this conversation for a while. And I
Right?
know you and I always have a tendency to just catch up at the most spontaneous of times, right? But gosh, I've just enjoyed watching your journey these last few
Thank you.
years. I know there's been some extreme highs, but there's also been some equally, you know, very prominent lows, right?
Very,
But to see how
yeah.
you navigate that with your resiliency and that athletic attitude, right? That only a 15-time Ironman athlete can have. But it's wonderful to just see you
Right.
leading by example, modeling and mentoring us all just through not only the content, but now this podcast too. And that's why when you
Oh my,
invited me to be here, I was like, hell
yeah.
yeah!
I
So
know. I was
it's
like,
great.
Di needs to
Awesome.
be on this podcast. So,
Thank you.
tell
Thank you.
everybody enough about me because this is your platform now. Like, I want to share your story because
Uh,
you've metamorphosized many times in your life,
mm,
and
mm.
you've inspired me to make some major changes. And I'm not going to get emotional yet because we're only 2 minutes in. So, with that said, tell everybody a little bit about
Uh,
who you are.
well, back in the day, if you asked me that question, I know my ego would have been, well, driving the comments, or what I would have responded. But it was quite a number of years ago. That was one of my more prominent transitions or metamorphoses, using your language. And, since then, everything shifted and everything changed. It's like one great question. And then, whoa, the last 14 years have been me trying to realize the answer to that question, which we can get into in a little bit. So there's a little planting a seed, a little teaser there for people to
I
stay
like
tuned.
it.
But first and foremost, I'm a father. I've got two young adult kids now. I mean, Jen, that feels so
Crazy.
weird to even acknowledge. I know, right? It's like they're 18 and 20, two girls, both off at university. Very proud of them. But the last few months been transitioning my wife and I into empty nesters, and that's just a whole nother area that I wasn't prepared for. And
Sure.
but I've been married, happily dating my wife for the last 23 years, and
Love
on
that.
top of that, just someone that really loves helping people develop a positive relationship with change. Because
Ooh.
change is just one of those things. It's rarely easy, but it's almost always worth it.
Mm.
And yet it is a given that it's going to happen whether we like it or not. So why not learn how to be a little bit more positive, or at least more develop a healthier agency when it comes to us navigating our own changes in our lives, and
Sure.
so I do that both personally and professionally with people, whether it be life coaching, if people like that sort of generalized term, or business coaching or consultant. I just find
Right.
that's really generic, and really what I'm helping people with is change for the better, change
Mm.
for the better. So yeah, that's it.
That's
That's me.
beautiful. That is you. I mean, but you have gone through, like I said, you've gone through
Mm,
many changes. And
sure.
I guess the one question that I've been asked a lot for
Mm,
myself is the
yeah.
whole alcohol,
Oh
right?
yeah. 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 Yeah.
And the
Mm.
stopping and how did you do it, blah, blah, blah. Now that was a
Right.
big, and I know you have a TEDx talk about it, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I do.
So can you
Yeah.
give everybody just a little brief snippet of that
Sure.
major change that gave you that aha moment that you needed to stop?
Cool. Well, I wish it came sooner. I think that's always sort of that regret when we look back. It's
Yeah.
like, why couldn't I have made that change sooner? And I have to, just sort of give myself a little bit of grace and recognize, I wasn't ready for it.
Mhm.
Otherwise I would have changed. I
Right.
would have done it sooner if I was ready for it. And what I mean by that is just really, I ultimately came to a decision at 32 years old that I was going to choose the life that I've always dreamed of having, that I believed I was working towards. And in favoring that, I was going to say no to alcohol. So yes to my life, no to alcohol. And I realized those are two questions I had to answer that way. Now, answering it and then following up with actual actions,
Right.
that is where most of us stumble, and I'll admit I stumble, and um, for me, alcohol was a wonderful way of escaping, avoiding.
Mm.
Really, I mean, it
Mhm.
was great avoidance, but it also for me, because at 17, 18 years old, I began to develop this idea that people preferred being with the guy that drinks, that version of me,
Ah,
over the person that I was when I wasn't drinking. And confirmation bias is alive and real for those that aren't familiar with that. Our subconscious, we say that we believe something. Our subconscious likes to help us validate
uh-huh.
it as often as it can. And
Ah,
uh,
yes.
I was really good at proving the belief, that look, I went out last night, I drank, and look, there was people that gave me attention. I got invited to another party, made some new connections, even though I don't remember half of them.
Right.
Like it's just, and this was a thing that was modeled and mentored to me all through my 20s. When I look at
Mm.
my business relationships and what I was doing, it was just the normal.
Mhm.
And that's the thing with alcohol. I think it's heavily normalized. And but what's not normalized is the negative effects of alcohol. Even though we're,
Right.
we're aware of it, but we don't normalize the conversation. There's still a lot of stigma around it,
Mhm.
which was the reason why I created the TEDx talk. I really wanted to talk about this idea of being vulnerable and how
Mm.
vulnerability is one of those stages, or I should say steps or actions that allows us to tap into change,
Mhm.
because change is really hard to do on our own, but
Yes.
there's a difference between being on our own and being alone. And it's usually a choice,
Mhm.
and it does require an action to bridge those. And for me, I was really good at delaying that. And long and short of it, there was one night, my wife and I had already been together for 10 years. I was 32 years old. We already had two daughters. They were both under the age of 6 at the time. And I don't know how I got home the night before, but I made it home somehow. And I woke up the next morning, and actually it was almost noon by the time I got out of bed. And I wasn't in
Right.
bed, unfortunately. I was actually lying on the Berber carpet to the adjacent to the bed, and family
Right.
was up. They were going about their work on the day, and my wife's tending to the kids. And I made my way to the kitchen, and my wife looked at me in a way that she never looked at me before. And as I always say, she's someone that sees the potential in me that even myself, I never saw in myself, but she had this ability to
Right.
see something in me that
Oh.
and support that to coming to the surface and the fruition, becoming my who I am, and
Yeah.
um, that's the power of a really strong mentor or
Yeah.
that person in our life that can help us navigate some of those hard parts, right? And
Sure.
I don't know, Jen. She looked at me in a way that I was afraid.
Yeah.
There was a lot of fear there, and she sat me down, and one of the first things out of her mouth was, this is not normal anymore. This is not going to be our normal, and this is not going to be an environment that we raise our girls in. Let's talk about what it's going to look like to co-parent and where you may have to move to live. Like it was like,
Ooh.
holy smokes, what? Because family is one of my
Yeah.
values, always has been.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when we don't honor our values, it creates a lot of this holes or gaps or chasms inside of us. And we tend to
Mhm.
distract ourselves from acknowledging those, or we fill it with frivolous things and never actually fill the bottomless pit, whether that
Right.
be gambling, sex, pornography, right?
Right.
Alcohol, drugs.
Drugs.
I mean,
Mhm.
shopping to an extreme,
Shop
right?
sure.
Like
100%.
there's lots of ways we can distract ourselves. And for me, it was alcohol, and she asked me a question, and I'm giving you the short version of the story. She gave me a question, and the question was, Di, are you being the type of man that you would want to marry your daughters? And Jen, that
Damn.
question changed everything. It literally changed everything, because I realized right then and there, what I was modeling to my girls, to Christy, my wife, to my friends, to my
Yeah.
coworkers, to the company and the people that were in the company that I was a co-founder of, like
Mm.
I was modeling that this is not only normal, this is okay. And I started to realize, if someone like me at that time, at 32 years of age, showed up on my doorstep wanting to get close to both my wife and my kids, I wouldn't let them across the threshold.
Mhm.
But that's what I was saying was
Interesting.
okay every day, by doing what I was
Right.
doing. So, um, I made a decision right then and there. Some people call it a last ditch effort. Sure, call it what you will. But for once in my life, I decided to make a decision, and it was a decision I was not going to negotiate on.
Mm-hmm.
And my decision
Mm-hmm.
was to go 1 year without drinking. And I know people are going to be like, well, 1 year, that's not a big of a deal. Come on. I'm like, you don't understand. From age 17 to 32, 15 years of my life, the longest I'd ever done is one sober January. Like, alcohol was
Right.
always there. And
Yeah.
when you learn how to function really well with that crutch like that, it's very scary to imagine yourself navigating the world without the crutch. I realized I had a pretty bad limp.
Yeah.
And it took me about 6 weeks into that I realized, holy smokes, this is hard. I need some help.
Mm-hmm.
And I found some help. And from there, within a few months, everything changed. And
Yeah.
I've been on that path now for 14 years. It's 14
Amazing.
years since I had a drink, because really a lifestyle emerged from that. It was like,
Yeah.
just realized, I wanted to keep saying no to that distraction, that avoiding
Mm-hmm.
tactic, to say yes and lean into all the things that I'd always said I wanted and said were value to me and were really important. But now I was going to honor that by
Yeah.
following up with immediate action and
Yeah.
consistent and frequent, right? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
again, show up at the gym one time, you're not fit. Okay. Like,
Right.
you say no
Yeah.
to McDonald's one time, it doesn't mean that all your nutrition woes are now solved. Like
Right.
you have to keep making the decision, keep asking
Yeah.
the hard questions every day, and honoring the answer,
Mm-hmm.
and it ain't easy, but I can
No,
tell
and
you, holy
yeah.
smokes, it's worth it, really,
Right. And
really. Yeah.
kudos to Christy
Yeah.
for
Oh,
seeing that
all her.
and
Yeah.
transitioning that thought process in your
Mm,
head, because
mm,
sometimes for Christy to be as strong as she
mm.
was to say that to you, man, like that's a powerful partner. So
Thank
kudos
you.
to your girlfriend.
She's pretty awesome. I
She
count myself
is.
very grateful,
I
and and
agree.
and lucky, that
Yeah.
she stuck it out. She was
Yeah.
willing to.
Right.
She still saw that guy in me, right? The guy that she fell in
Yeah.
love with. I think I had forgotten
Mm.
who that guy was. That's all. Yeah.
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 And I think that's what happens is I think a lot of
Mm.
people will put a mask on,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
and whatever that might be, like we talked about, because they just sort of go into that robotic, oh, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm supposed to be doing this, this, and this. And then,
Mhm.
and then once you take that mask off, you're like, wait a minute, I'm not happy. Like I
Mm.
can make a change. I can make a
Yeah.
shift. And that's where a lot of people are afraid to take that leap. So, speaking
Sure.
of talking about
Oh
taking a leap,
yeah.
another big story for you is you were a company owner
Mhm.
and you said out of here and
Yep.
started your own business,
Mm.
and then you guys moved to Bali. I mean, gosh, where do we even start? Like,
Well, let me put it this way. When we start navigating changes, and I say we, it's not the royal we, but I'm talking about anybody that's sort of open to that itch. And sometimes I don't even
yeah,
refer to it as an itch. It's like, you get a splinter in your finger. It's annoying. It's not going to kill you. I mean, sure, it could get infected. It might
right.
get pussy. It might not look the prettiest. It might get really painful. But rarely will you die from a little splinter.
Right.
But we can navigate about our days pretty well with that little annoyance. Now, it's not going to be comfortable, but we can get to a place where it becomes normal. And it just doesn't hurt bad enough to make a change, right? Like,
Mhm.
and I think if we think about certain aspects of our own lives, we probably are very tolerant, or we've just said, that's okay. Like we let
Right.
ourselves down a little bit, right? Like we hold a certain standard for ourselves, but we're like, nah, as far as my family commit, I mean, I'm a good dad. I'm a good dad. I'm doing X, Y, Z. Check, check, check. Oh, I dropped the kids off of school. Oh, I packed a lunch today. Like I'm a
Yeah.
good dad, right? Like I'm doing the actions.
Yep.
But on the same note, it would be really easy for me to justify, oh, I know there's a birthday party this day, but hey, I got a supplier in town. It's really important that I go to that dinner, and honestly, back then it was because I was looking forward to a night out drinking with the boys. And this is what
Interesting.
I mean. Like there's these sort of hidden agendas at times,
Yeah.
when it came to these
Uh-huh.
I would compromise with myself, right, to
Right.
justify the actions. And I realized it was just all games I was playing with myself. And long and short of it, I had to get to a place where I was okay with starting afresh. And what I mean by this is I started to look at what my career path had led me down. I got into
Hmm.
sales. I developed a real knack with selling fitness equipment. I mean, I love doing it because I was like, wow, this is the first time I'm in a performance-based pay structure, meaning that I was earning commissions. And I
Sure.
remember when they were hiring me in my early 20s, I'm like, so you're telling me the more people I help get healthy by investing in the right product, you're going to pay me more? And they're like, yes. I'm like, sign me up.
Sign me up. That's
And
easy.
yeah, and I loved it, and I excelled. Within a year, I was one of the top reps in Canada. And
Wow.
fortunately for me, I also attracted a wonderful mentor, and I was ready to be mentored. I was starving for mentorship, for coaching, for leadership in my life,
Hmm.
because I didn't really have a lot of strong male role models. So here I was meeting one of the co-founders of that other company, and 20 years my senior. And really I
Okay.
was looking at him as in early 20s. He was early 40s. I was like, wow, this is the guy who's got it together. He's got two young kids, beautiful home. He's got this great company he's a partner in. Wow, I
Right.
want to be like that. Well, 17 years later, after I went through this huge shift myself, and it was actually about 4 years before I exited out of the company. I went through that process at 32, gave up
Okay.
alcohol,
Okay.
started to
I was
make these
wondering where
changes
that
because things
was.
start,
Yep.
yeah, as things started to come into
Yep.
focus. And I didn't actually exit out of the company. It wasn't quite 5 years later, but there was a kink in the armor back then when Christy asked me that question. Because all of a sudden I said, okay, well, I'm going to say no to this. By saying no to that, I didn't realize how much resources would be freed up. And I'm not talking just
Mm.
money. Of course, yeah. I mean, I was amazed at how much more money we have on the month to month because I wasn't spending money on booze,
Right.
like, or going out
Exactly.
and partying and all that.
Yeah.
But it was the time and the energy. And
Ah.
so I started doing a lot of things outside of work, things for myself, personal development for once in my life. I wasn't just professional development because it was always professional development. I would always say, yeah, I'm always developing myself professionally because it was all ego driven. I want to be seen as a dude.
Yes.
I want to make more money. I want to have a better title. I want to have more stuff.
Oh,
And that's what was
yes.
driving me, but it never fulfilled me. And now I made
Hmm.
these changes, moved away from alcohol, got back to the things that I actually valued, and I made those values non negotiable.
Yes.
And I started to honor those: family, my fitness, my faith, my finances, and of course, ensuring that I'm having a lot of fun at the same
Yeah.
time. Yes, there's five F's there if you're doing the counting. And I love
Yes.
alliteration, by the way. So I, that's what I started to do. And everything changed. And what happened was within a few years, and this is sort of the point to this little story here, is I started to think about what do I really want for my life as I'm nearing 40 years old. My kids are getting older. I'm getting older. I'm changing. I've been on this
Hmm.
path of change. I'm seeing things differently. I'm seeing myself differently. What do I want for my life?
Mm.
What makes me feel fulfilled? What makes me feel happy and joyful? And I started saying, well, is this it? Is this path that I'm on as a co-founder of a company? We're scaling. We've just done 10 figures in a year. I'm like, wow, we're doing really well. This is amazing. This is what I've been working towards. And I started really thinking about it. I was actually chasing my business partner's life, not my own life. From early in 20s, I was under this impression that if I work hard enough, I'm going to be just like him. I'll have everything
Interesting.
that he has, like, and that was the vision that I had, was his life, not my own.
Hmm.
And it was a scary realization because all of a sudden I started thinking, I'm like, well, I don't want that. Well, then what do I want? And I was like,
Yeah.
well, I can tell you one thing: being on the path that I'm on here professionally, this career path, it doesn't feel like the right path for me anymore. And I know this scares the crap out of us all, especially if you've been in a career path for a long time. And I'm talking
Hmm.
decades, right? We see people into the 40s and 50s, and you speak to this so well, Jen, because you've been someone that's metamorphosized into so many beautiful butterflies,
I
through your own
have.
changes,
Yeah.
and when you emerge from that chrysalis, you see the world differently,
You
you
do.
know, and you can either avoid the new perspective and go back to your old ways, But I'll tell you, you'll always be thinking about it. And it will
Mhm.
become this little earworm, like a song that gets stuck in your
Yeah.
head.
Yeah.
That idea of what could have been will take deep root.
Mhm.
And it is a mind F, like it really messes
Yeah.
with you. And
I mean,
I didn't want that,
conversation we had
Yeah.
before we even started, I said,
Hmm.
sometimes that there's those moments that I question things. Like
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my God, did I do the right thing? Should I have done that?
Yeah.
But then when I look at my life as a whole, and just prime example, like here I am in Michigan, came up to
Mm.
visit family, mom takes a fall. I have the flexibility
Yeah.
to live anywhere in the world and work from anywhere in the world. And like,
Hell yes.
and you get that, especially for you
Yeah.
living in Bali. Like, so
Yeah.
you're all gonna, if you are going
Mm.
through a change, and this is what I wanted to say, if you
Mm.
are going through a change, anybody, you're gonna have those doubts. Oh my
Yes.
God, you're gonna have those
Yeah.
doubts. Even after you made the change, you're
Yeah.
still gonna have those doubts. They still come up. They still be like, hello, are you sure? Let me test you, you know?
Yeah.
But anyways, I just wanted to throw that out there because
You're right.
yeah.
Like it's spot on, Jen. And there's always going to be those little voices in your head that are going to make you question what you've decided to do.
Hmm.
And I think this is where, an exercise by Tim Ferriss, he did a TED talk long time ago, I think back in the early
Hmm.
2000s, mid 2000s, where he talked about this exercise called fear setting. This idea of just asking yourself, well, what's the worst that could happen if I do this? And I
Right.
know it's like, there's gonna be people, well, that's pretty doomsday, like you could die. I'm like, okay, yeah, but I mean, reality here, people, like
Reality. Yeah.
what's real? What's truly the worst that could happen? And my wife and I, as we were discussing me exiting a 17-year career as well, we knew shortly after that she would leave her career. So this is sort of the path we were working
Yeah.
towards. I was the first to go.
Yep.
I made
I
that
remember
move
that.
first,
Yep.
quit 17-year career. I was like, peace out. I'm not doing this anymore. I don't know what I'm going to do, but this won't be it anymore. And I've been working on a book and some other things. I started doing a lot more
Yep.
speaking and was doing a lot more stuff with my own brand online. With thankfully, I had
You
that
were.
already on the go,
Hmm.
never monetized, but I was
Right.
doing it in a way to just help me feel more fulfilled because I could help a lot of people with this thing called social media. I create great
Hmm.
content that helps people. Just a little shift in perspective might elevate their belief in themselves to make that first action, to work on that path, right? To change that they
Yeah.
want,
Yeah.
the dress. I want to make that change. They just were intimidated, right? And
Yeah.
so this idea of fear setting was really good for my wife and I because as we were talking about, well, we both leave our career, we leave that comfort we have of two incomes, and
Yeah.
we were
Scary.
making good money, so it was like
Yeah.
good. We could raise our kids, we could have a good lifestyle. It was very comfortable,
Hmm.
but wasn't fulfilling. So it's like comfort or fulfillment. Oh, geez. Well, I'd rather be uncomfortable and
Right.
feel way more fulfilled, So
Hmm.
you take the risk, and we acknowledge though we're young, we're both very very coachable,
Yep.
and we have some great skill sets that aren't easily replicated. So what's the worst that could happen? Well, we come back. We have friends and family that love us. They have spare bedrooms. They have couches. They have big backyards we
Exactly.
can pitch a tent in. Okay, like
Right.
it's all good.
You're
We
in
can come back.
Canada.
Yeah, we're in
Yeah.
Canada. And you know what? Like the worst that could happen, we come back and we start over. We get careers and
Right.
we do it again. Like that was honestly the worst that could happen. I mean, there's
Hmm.
always the concern that you might walk out off the curb and get hit by a bus. I mean, that doesn't matter. I could be
Right.
here working my
Right.
career or I could be in Bali, Indonesia.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't matter where I'm at,
Exactly. There
you
there
know?
might be a gunshot. Hey, guess what? You
Exactly.
that could happen in Chicago and that can happen in Costa Rica,
That's right.
whatever.
That's
Right.
exactly right. And so, it wasn't there's real fears, right? I get it.
Yeah.
But then there's also a lot of hyperbolized fears that we have. And I
Right.
found that it's easy to let the brain and imagination hyperbolize things, make them seem worse than they are.
Hmm.
So we can justify not taking action or not making the initial changes to lead into that, right? Like,
Yeah.
and I get it because I've been there lots of times.
Yes. Uh-huh.
And so after that, my wife left her career. A few months after that, we pulled the kids out of school, gave away our stuff, packed up our SUV, any of the sort of emotional things that we possess, we put into a
Right.
storage unit, and we started traveling with no agenda, no direction other than we're going south. Being in Canada, January, it makes sense to want to go south. Trust me. Okay,
Right.
so we went south, and it started a 5-year journey,
I
of us
forgot
traveling
about
all
that.
over the place. And
Yeah.
then eventually we ended up in Bali, Indonesia, where we stayed for 2.5 years before moving back to
Yep.
Canada so my kids could finish high school in Vancouver. And
Makes sense.
hell of a journey. Like there's lots of ups and downs on that journey. There's times where we're
Right.
like, how are we going to pay for something tonight?
Mm,
Like there was a lot of
it's
stress at
true.
times, but we were together. We were realizing a vision and a dream that we had. And we knew worst case scenario, there's always somebody we could call to help us out,
Yep.
you know? And so we just adventured. We did. We
Yeah.
learned. We grew. We experienced a lot as a family for those five
Mhm.
years, and I wouldn't trade those for anything.
That's
Not for
amazing.
a single thing. And
Yeah.
but all because my wife asked me that question at 32 years old. Like had she not asked me that question, I can honestly say,
Right.
Jen, you and I probably would have never met. We
Nope.
wouldn't have had this conversation today.
Right.
Like I'd be in a very different place.
Very
So it's
much
amazing
so.
what happens. You get asked by the right question at the right times. It's going to open up the right perspective, which might open
Yep.
up the opportunity to take the right action to create that right result. Right. So you just
100%.
never know what happens when you get a good question asked of you.
I like that.
Yeah.
Even the Ted Ferriss question, I think that's
Yes.
a great question. I mean, a lot like it's an ongoing joke with my team
Yeah.
for the Rulon racing team
Oh,
because
yes.
like
Yes.
they'll sit there and be like, "Oh my god, I just did this long bike and long run, blah blah blah," and then within seconds somebody's like, "But did you die?" Like
Yeah.
the gift or whatever, and it's true. Like
Yeah.
you sit there and you're
Yeah.
like, "But you made it through it." Like what a great
Totally.
way to like level up. You got through that. So then, okay, what's next? What's next? Oh, guess what? The race. Here I am at my Ironman, whatever that might be.
Yep.
So, um, well, oh my God, you and I could probably
I
talk
know. We'll
forever.
have a follow up. I know we will. Get
We
you on my
will.
podcast, which is coming. So I'm putting it on the record right now. So
Okay.
that's where we can have
We're
part
gonna,
2 of this.
yes, I think that's a fantastic idea. So
Yeah.
where can my followers find you?
Well, listen, I'm a social dude, all right, and I'm active on social media, but most active on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So I
Facebook,
always say, if you can
Instagram.
spell my name, you can find me pretty easily because SEO
Yes.
loves my name. I'm the only one
Yes.
with it. And I have a website, daimanuel.com, which is always easy to sort of get information. And I've got
Yep.
1,800 articles I've published over the last 15 years of blogging, all geared around this idea of change. And I
Hmm.
just invite people, start your journey there, type in something that you're interested in, see what comes up. And then if you like,
Beautiful.
reach out to me, ask a question. Let me know what you're working on right now, And I
Yeah.
love having conversation, meeting new people that are, I guess, on that journey of change. They're
Hmm.
excited, they're afraid, they're eager, to
Yes.
realize that
Yep.
that transformation. And I'll tell you, it's a lot more fun being on that journey when you got other people you can connect with and talk with that are also enduring something similar. Because there's going to be
Hmm.
really crappy days. I mean, Jen, you
Hmm.
can speak to this just as well as I
Oh,
can.
good Lord. Yeah.
But I'll tell you, my crappy day now is better than the crappy day I had
Yes.
before. Okay, so
Yes. Yes.
perspective wise,
Yes.
I enjoy it a lot more now on those crappy days than what I used to have to deal with. So
Yes.
I don't second guess my choices
Good.
anymore.
Good.
So but thank you for
Are
this,
you
Jen.
still,
It's great.
of
Yeah.
course, are you still doing, I have one more question, but are you
Oh,
still
sure,
doing
sure.
men's
Yeah, just about to get it
support
started again.
groups?
Just about to start it
Good.
again. Yeah, we've got
Okay.
some online groups that will be starting up again, and but before that. I'm going to be starting an in-person event again. It's
Great.
been a bit of a start-stop based on pandemic and a few other
Sure.
issues that have popped over the few years. But there has been an online group that's been meeting regularly on Monday nights,
Good.
Mentorship
Men
Mondays, and
mentorship. Love it.
we're
I'll put all the links in the
thank you,
show
thank
notes,
you.
y'all.
I'm
Yes, of
transitioning
course.
to mentorship meetups. So it'll be
Ooh,
meetups for men, whether online, offline. It's sort of a
amazing.
rebrand of that. But
Yep.
yes, if there's men out there that are looking to connect with other great men, please reach out to me. I'll have details on how you can participate.
Great.
And
Great.
cool part is there's no cost to it. And I know my
Exactly.
business coach is like, "What are you doing?" Like, and
Yeah.
I'm
Just
like,
like
well,
just like me
I don't
starting
care.
this podcast. Like,
Yeah.
what are you doing?
Oh,
Yeah.
what do you do? Well, this is again, I get fulfillment. So being completely
Exactly.
selfish, yeah, I am.
Yeah.
It's not a selfless act because I get a lot of value from doing this. So,
Exactly.
but when I get those messages from people saying, you know what, I accomplished something today I never thought I could,
Yeah.
and when you
Right.
get those messages, it's like, oh man, why would I not be doing this anymore?
Exactly.
And yeah, I
Yeah.
see that in you, Jen. I mean, every day I read some of
Thank
the
you.
comments on the posts on Instagram. I see what you're sharing. I'm like, that's incredible. I'm so
Thank you.
proud of you, but also I feel very grateful to count you a friend. So
I agree. I
yeah,
agree. It was all that, all because of Twitter.
totally cool. Huh? Wow, it's awesome,
Right.
awesome.
Right.
And just so you know,
Um,
full disclosure, Jen, you were the first person that got me into coaching.
I remember we had this conversation because I asked if you did any business coaching,
That's right. And at the
right?
time, I wasn't. I mean, I had some people I was mentoring, but just
Sure.
sort of the occasional conversation here and there. But then you asked very specifically what kind of sport you're looking for, and I was like, this is something I really do want to do, and okay, let's figure it out. So I have to thank you
Well,
because
thank
had you
you.
not asked those questions
Oh,
and us
that's cool.
engaged that way, I don't know if I'd be working in the capacity that I am today. So I have
Hmm.
you to thank for that. So thank you.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for really, gosh, I don't even know. Like, you've helped my brand and my business
Mm.
over the years. And I know we've bounced in and out, over life and everything, but we
Mm.
always come back together, I swear, and just like picked up like we left off from the last time I talked to you and whatever day that was. I still
Awesome.
remember it was December 2020. I was in
Wild, huh?
Costa Rica, and that was the last photo that I
Wow.
have of us. I screenshot it.
No way. That's
Mhm.
awesome. I mean, I remember when you
Yeah.
made that move, it was just like, holy, she's doing
No,
it.
20 it was 20 yeah, it
uh,
was 2020. That's right, because I
yeah.
moved in December 2021. All
All right.
right. Last
Okay.
famous question.
Ask
Da, da,
away.
da, da, da. For those followers that are
Mm.
looking for that change, are
Mm.
transformating into their own beautiful butterfly. Is that even a
Hmm.
word?
Hmm. I
Um,
think so.
let's make it up. What one piece of advice would
Hmm.
you give them to start their journey?
There's three questions I invite you to think about and really introspect on. Like, spend some time really thinking about these questions. And the first question is, can I do it? It being whatever the change is. You then follow it up. Once you haven't answered that, then you follow it up with question two. If I do this, will it work?
Mhm.
And then finally, question three, is it worth it? And, if we're talking about something fairly general, it works, but I'm going to ask you to look in the mirror and say, am I worth it?
Mm,
Because these three questions are going to shine a big spotlight into certain areas you may have been avoiding. And I'll tell you, unearthing that is going to be the first step towards realizing the changes that you want to make. And so
mhm.
that would be what my invitation would be to anybody looking to start is work through
Beautiful.
journal, reflect,
Mm,
think on those three questions. Because once you have the clarity, your confidence goes up. When you feel more confident, you take more decisive action. And guess what? You
mhm.
put things off less, no, much less
Yeah.
procrastinating. So seek
Yes.
clarity in action and sorry, clarity and confidence, and the actions will follow.
Yeah. And get out of your own damn way.
Hell yeah.
Yes. Well, thank you for that. I think that
Yeah.
is an incredible way to end. Di, I appreciate you, your friendship.
Oh,
Tell Christy and the girls hello.
I
Give
will.
them all my love and keep some for yourself as well.
Oh, thanks, Jen. Much love to you as well.
Yes,
And looking forward to our next conversation.
agreed on your podcast.
Hell yeah.
Y'all, if you are loving the Everyday Healthy Human podcast, you know what to do. Share, like, give me that 5-star rating, because you know what I say with a combination of Costa Rica and Texas? Pura vida, y'all. Bye.